Hello everyone, my name is Pastor Samuel K. Majuk. I would like to draw to your attention Sky fake news and defamation toward South Sudanese community in Victoria. I will point out some of their lies in this video.
At least one of the new virus hotspots, with 14 new infections so far, was triggered by an end of Ramadan feast in Coburg for South Sudanese migrants from Melbourne's northern and southeastern suburbs. Now, obviously, all these new patients have to be treated, all their contacts traced, and everyone who's potentially infected has to go into quarantine. That, at least, is all pretty straightforward.
It is a community defamation because none of South Sudanese currently is affected by the COVID-19 or contracted COVID-19 in Victoria. Also, the celebration of Ramadan, as you said, none of South Sudanese would attend the Ramadan because 99.99% are Christian in Victoria. So what brings Sudanese name to your news today?
What are the excuses that have been made to explain away how members of this community breached social distancing rules in the first place? According to community leaders, Melbourne's South Sudanese weren't really aware of the rules.
Where and when did you find South Sudanese community in Victoria breaching social distancing or the COVID-19 rules? And who is this South Sudanese community leader who say that he's not aware about the rules of COVID-19? Why don't you bring that leader into your news rooms or on the screen so that we can see and hear from him? I believe most of Sudanese leaders know how to speak and write English.
Not just in the media, but out in the streets, because this is what they say: although community health messages were printed in the language of Dinka, many Sudanese migrants can speak Dinka, but they can't actually read it.
I can see here there's no connection between the Dinka who speak or the Dinka who don't know how to speak or write Dinka. There's no connection here because I believe any family member who don't know how to speak or write, there has to be someone there who will help to interpret or tell him what is written in the paper or in the flyer. Self-community leaders also do the outreach and they tell all the members of their community about the rules of COVID-19, about social distancing, of how we can protect ourselves from COVID-19.
Now, the reason they can't read it is that many of them, especially the women, were banned from attending school in their former homeland. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Rather than say this just underscores why new migrants must urgently learn English when they arrive in Australia so that they can quickly become part of our mainstream society, the South Sudanese community leaders instead argue that we should be, their word, empowering them, by this they mean fund them, to spend more time delivering these virus health messages via the spoken word of Dinka, rather than just Dinka language written in brochures and ads in the paper.
Well, again, I can see here there's no connections about women being banned from going to school in South Sudan. We are not in South Sudan, we are in Australia, and we do encourage our women, our family members to learn English. If you see the statistic now, you will see most of South Sudanese are actually gone to high education. They have degree, they have master's degree, they have PhD holder. And they actually contribute to the development and welfare of this nation.
How bad it is in Victoria, if that means, in the words of an official spokesman, outreach teams, door knocking of homes and phone calls, all delivered in a range of foreign languages, well, it's not my preferred option, but it's better than anything else considering where we are now. Likewise too, $5,000 that the Victorian government reportedly gave to local mosques in Melbourne to have digital services in order to ensure the faithful stayed away from Friday Islamic prayers.
We do have our digital services. We stream our services live or pre-record the services, and we have never asked for funding for our churches. I'm a church minister, and since the outbreak of COVID-19, I do stream my church services for my community to benefit from my services. Why don't you mention that local community mosque that actually got the $5,000 why don't you mention that
The other
sub-community
religions
if
seem
you
to
are
be
not
shutting
racist
down the
or
services, but
victimized in a
clearly
certain
this is the
community?
problem. Now, all of that's good and well, but when are we going to wake up to the fact that encouraging people to live here as South Sudanese speaking Dinka rather than as Australians speaking English is not good for us, it's not good for cohesion, and it's certainly not good for recently arrived migrants.
It is not good for you or cohesions or whatever people you call, but it is good for us, for our children to speak in our language, to speak in Dinka. So we will continue to encourage them to learn their mother tongue as well as English. Like Asians, like Chinese speak Chinese and they also go to English classes and attend English. Germany, they speak German language. Italian, they speak Italy language. So we will not stop our Sudanese community learning
Most of the
Dinka
South
language.
Sudanese-born people in Victoria have come in the past 2 decades. According to 2016 census data, 32% are officially unemployed and 70% earn less than $800 a week. Now, it's hardly surprising, is it, when even the official data shows that 15% speak virtually no English.
Your 2016 data is also wrong. In simple mathematics, if you add 32% to 70%, will be like 102%. So I don't know what you are talking about here. Also, I do not see the connections of maybe people who earn less than $800 and those who earn a lot of money for a week. That one has nothing to do with
Services
COVID-19.
have to be delivered to people as they are, rather than as we want them to be. So if the plethora of small grants to organisations running Dinka language programs are actually helping people to become literate and fluent in English, well, arguably, that could be part of the solution. But if, as I suspect, many of them are sops to community leaders with a vested interest in keeping people in cultural enclaves and keeping them from learning English in the first place, then that's a real problem.
Also, I see like you have your hidden agenda. Why? Because as a news anchor, you are there to present news to the people, but you are not there to contribute or to add your opinions. So I think you have your own interests as well as a community leaders that you just mentioned. If community leaders have their own interests as well as you yourself, it is the roles of the government and the role of sub-community to identify those leaders who have interests.
According to one of these South Sudanese community leaders, their culture means that people have to descend en masse to someone's home in times of trouble or bereavement, such as recently when a young man was stabbed to death in a gang attack. But
recently, the government allowed 5 to 10 people to go home. So the number of people who visit that place were not more than 20 people. As well as in our churches now, we are only allowed to welcome at least less than 10 people to do recording in the church, so we would be able to stream our church services.
If Australians have been able to change their cultural appreciation of events like Anzac Day to accommodate this virus, well, surely new arrivals can too, and it must change. If the culture is about gang membership, unemployment and an inability to speak Australia's national language, to the point of not even knowing about social distancing, doesn't that have to change urgently for everyone's good?
I don't know what you are talking about, but we do not have gangs. What we have is our culture, to be specific, we are a communion society. We are not individual society. So it is because of COVID-19, that's why we stay away from each other right now. But after, maybe later on after COVID-19, people will begin to visit each other.
Rolling over yet again when it comes to defending our language and our values, just because too many of us too scared to speak up for what's really important.
Well, you are not speaking up. You are defaming a certain community. But I don't see the reason why all the time point finger to South Sudanese community, mainly in Victoria. I don't see, because the South Sudanese in Victoria, in terms of the populations, they are 0.01%. So I don't see the reason. Every time the media wanted to point finger at South Sudanese in Victoria. If it is politically motivated, and then go and solve your political issues and leave South Sudanese out of your questions. Thank you so much. Thank you.